Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, Capital Markets Analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today we've got Wes Reynolds. He is the founder and CEO, Green Mill Supercritical. Wes, thanks for being with us at the Talking Hedge.
Hey, great to be with you, Josh. Thanks for making the time today.
Yeah. So I want to know a little bit more about Green Mill Supercritical before we get there. Tell the audience a little bit about how you got into the cannabis industry and kind of what sparked your company.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks. And first of all, let me just say, I am the president and CEO of Green Mill, but I'm not actually a founder. I've been with the company for 2.5 years, but it was founded about 2 years before that by a couple of guys, one of whom is still very involved and the other one is not, but just, for accurate representation, et cetera. I'm a almost 20-year Coca-Cola guy. I was there mostly on the international side of the business. My family and I, we lived overseas and had a great career with Coke and loved that. And I would say around 2017, decided that I was itching to do something else and started kind of engineering an exit from Coke. And in that process, went through a rather lengthy and intensive discernment process of kind of what I wanted to do next, and kept coming back to cannabis. It was kind of right at that time when cannabis was starting to heat up a little bit, and there was a good bit of excitement about it. And it's a place where I feel there's a real need for a change of, the attitudes are changing when it comes to cannabis in particular. And I wanted to be part of that change because I think the plant that has a lot to offer to humanity in total, and particularly to our society in the U.S., and I think was wrongly maligned for a long time. And so it was important to me to be part of kind of changing that. So after I left Coke, I went to Florida for a year and ran the operation for Surterra down in Florida out of Tampa, which is now Parallel, which is one of the larger multi-state operators. I was the president of the Florida business and had that whole business seed to shelf. So we had a greenhouse, we had dispensaries, we had branded products, we had delivery, the whole 9 yards. I think Florida is a super licensed state, so every license basically has to control the product from start to finish in the market. Enjoyed that a lot, really had learned a lot about the space. And then kind of when I left Surterra, was looking as an investor primarily in the space. And I don't like the cultivation side of the business as much from an investment perspective. We can get into that some if you want to. I didn't feel like it was quite ready. It was quite time to be playing on the branded side, distribution side. So, that center ancillary kind of piece of the business was quite fascinating to me. And what I knew from my experience at Surterra was that everybody was unhappy with their extraction solutions. So I came across these guys at Green Mill out of Pittsburgh that I think are making the best piece of supercritical CO2 extraction equipment on the market today, and getting better, kind of by the month. We have regular innovations. We kind of improve our systems consistently. And I'm excited about what the company's doing, and I'm excited about what it means for consumers in the space who are, I think looking for better and better products and more differentiated products in the cannabis space. And Green Mill Supercritical system allows that to happen in a way that I think is somewhat uncommon in the space. So that's kind of our story. Maybe I'll stop there and let you dig a little.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to touch on the flower maybe a little bit. So part of your decision making, I think maybe, and don't let me speak for you, but it sounds like your experience being in Florida with the MSO kind of gave you an insight, and you were like, I don't really want to touch the flower. I haven't seen anything on the ground in Florida, but having grown myself, I know that humidity is a huge factor. Powdery mildew, all of these things are a factor to play in. And when you get to a high humidity area like Florida, it's going to be very, very expensive to counteract that. You have a dense flower. I would think mold, mildew, all of those things are an issue. Is that the case? Is it expensive to cultivate? Was that part of your decision making in not wanting to touch the flower?
It wasn't so much that, yes, I mean, perhaps it's a bit more expensive. I don't think it's prohibitively more expensive. I think you can grow, I think you can successfully grow, particularly with indoor control grow. I think, environmental factors they're a concern, but, we've learned how to mitigate those, to a large degree. So I don't think that's a huge issue. I think, if you're the real purist, and I don't pretend to be a cannabis connoisseur on that level. I think but the connoisseurs that I know, there is no substitute for really great flower. It's just that's where you want to be. That's what you want to have. That's what you want to be consuming. I think that's in an ideal world, that's true. But I also think that most consumers today in the market want a more discreet product, for lots of different reasons. And they want a more convenient product than necessarily you're going to get out of, flower all the time. Although there's some cool innovations with, things like these, vaporizers with the, sticks that you put directly into the vaporizer, which I think is pretty cool. And, you're off and running. And so it's more because I think that in the marketplace, I think distinguishing your product, differentiating your product when it comes to flower is a more challenging proposition, I think, than a finished product that can be, more readily branded and more readily differentiated in the marketplace. So I just think most of the cultivation side of the business, and I'm going to get in trouble saying this because people are going to be like, you're crazy. But I think most of the cultivation side of the business is heading more toward commoditization than differentiation. And I think that there's an opportunity to really differentiate products through delivery methods, through, content, starting with great flower, of course. But I think that's where we'd rather play in that space that's not licensed. So we make a system that we sell to licensed operators, but we're not licensed operators ourselves. So we sort of sidestep that whole piece of the business.
Yeah. No, I don't think that sounds crazy at all. I totally agree with you from the sense that it's a race to the bottom. In fact, we just had wholesale and retail pricing from Apex and BDS Analytics on the show last week. And between May and April, prices are definitely decreasing in flower. Market share of flower in California is only 42%. And we're seeing wholesale and retail prices decreasing and maybe even same store sales peaking until we get to the point where there's new additional innovative products. And I think part of that is going to be beverages. You've got a career at Coca-Cola. And yet we haven't quite seen I'm from Seattle, and we haven't seen infused coffee on a wide scale basis. Portland has some grab and go. I'm not talking about the K-cups. That's not coffee, people. I'm talking about RTDs, ready to go drinks. Did you see Constellation Brands drop $1 billion into canopy growth? Was that part of your aha moment? Like, this is a legitimate industry, I'm going to jump into that. Did you see that at all?
I think. Oh yeah, sure. I mean, actually, I think it was 4.2 billion. I bet they wish it was $1 billion right now. But yes, that was clearly part of it. I think there was nothing but upside. I think it's an interesting dynamic because I'm going to run around your question a minute. I'll get sort of to it, but I think in the early phases of this space or sector, whatever you want to call it, when it comes to cannabis, which I think is broad, and we can narrow it a little bit, but I think it's been all things to all people. And what really was happening early and still happening to some degree, in my opinion, is that everybody was counting the full opportunity as an addressable opportunity for each operator. So everybody was kind of starting with a supply side equation, right? And they were going, okay, I've got X number of acres. I can plant this much biomass. I can harvest. I can extract. I have this much oil. I can sell it for X, or I can sell the flower for Y. And therefore, my business is worth this giant number. And two things I think were happening. One was the projected demand wasn't as much as everybody said it was going to be for lots of different reasons that we could get into. And then probably more importantly even was that everybody counted the whole market as their market, and so you have, let's say, 10 operators in a space, and all 10 of those operators are kind of counting everybody in the market as theirs, where really what they could expect is maybe 10% of the market, not 100% of the market. Therefore, everybody overestimated. And when you start with supply, then all you're doing is just increasing costs, and you're overcapitalizing what's already a complicated and difficult market to succeed in anyway. So, one of the things that we did at Green Mill very deliberately, but I think in the early days was it was risky, or let's say it was a little scary, was we said, we're not going to make anything over a 10-liter. We're not going to make any system with more than a 10-liter vessel. So we have small, by industry standards, our systems are small, but our larger system, but the great part is that they're small, but they're very convenient. They're very scalable. They move with you. You don't have to you don't overscale with our system, or you don't overcapitalize with our system. And our largest system, even though it's small, can still do about $10 million a year in revenue of concentrated oil at current prices. So there just aren't a lot of product lines out there doing $10 million a year. There are a lot of companies doing that kind of number, but they're doing it on multiple product lines. So what we like about our solution is it allows a very low capital investment in a market that's still evolving, and that we're still very, very much trying to understand the consumer. I would say that, there are people doing great jobs of working to understand the consumer, but we still understand it at such a macro level. We really don't have any good data, I don't think, around really detailed customer segmentation or consumer segmentation in this market, and how people are really behaving, what they're really doing, and what they really want. And I think as that evolves, I think it's going to be important for operators to be quick and be flexible in terms of their ability to change product lines, meet those products, whether that's beverages, like you say, which I think we'll certainly see more of. Although I think the use case for beverages is a little harder sometimes, just because of the onset factor. I think it's a little bit challenging. But I think that code will get cracked. I don't think we've cracked it yet.
They're working on it with some nanotech, but
exactly.
Yeah, it's got some ways to go.
Yeah. And so, and I think what we believe is true is that, like, a system like Green Mill allows you to kind of pinpoint one opportunity or one consumer, sort of solution, and then deliver against that consumer solution. And maybe you have 2 or 3 Green Mill systems, and maybe you have 2 or 3 BTO solutions, and maybe you have some other extraction solutions that are coming down the line. Maybe you have some solubility stuff that you'd use for beverages and other products. So I think that what's great about it is I think operators need to be thinking more diverse, not less diverse. Just imagine, Josh, if Starbucks opened stores, and instead of them brewing the coffee in the store, you mentioned coffee, they just created some central brewing house and then sent all the coffee out to the stores. Would you go buy it? I mean, probably not. But when you go into the store and they're brewing a fresh cup of coffee for you, okay, that works. That's appealing. And I think this idea that we can standardize this industry and create these, products that everybody wants, I don't think is right. I think it's going to be more and more craft products, not less. And the more craft products we have, there are going to be a few huge players that have huge share in the market, and that's great. They'll be like Coca-Cola. But what we want to service and what we're building systems for is that craft artisan operator who's trying to make a really differentiated, special product that they're going to market to consumers.
Yeah, I mean, somebody has to buy Tilray's, garbage up there. It's going to be people who don't really understand the market, that people buy Budweiser all the time, but it's going to be those the microbrew equivalents that actually produce things that people want, that aren't capped at terpene caps that they're talking about out there, and crazy stuff. But to your point, you had mentioned early on that in the interview that you didn't want to get involved with brands yet, too early for brands. Was that because people still were considering their products based on the highest THC at the lowest price point, and that's why you went with Green Mill Supercritical rather than focusing on a brand?
Yeah, I think it's also because just the stage of development. I think that it was don't get me wrong. I think Green Mill is a brand for us that we treat as a brand, and we talk about pushing CO2 beyond our limits. We're very committed to CO2. We love.
When I say brand, I mean like actual products, like
yeah.
products.
That's what I understood your question to be.
Okay.
So that's what I was just differentiating there. But it's more because I think it's just going to be a bloody space, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
I just think brand building is a very, very difficult thing. And it doesn't mean that there won't be some massive winners in that space, but I think there will be, 100 losers for every winner when it comes to branded products in this space. If you look at you look at soft drinks, there's a big, you talk about infused beverages, and every year, one of the big shows in the soft drink space is the NAC show, which is the National Association of Convenience Stores. Mm. And it's a huge show that moves around the country. Is that in Puerto Rico
recently?
It moves from usually Chicago, Orlando, Vegas. I think that's it. Maybe there's one more space, but they kind of rotate it around. And I haven't been in 5 or 6 years, since I left that role. But when energy drinks got really big, for example, it's kind of an interesting corollary, or maybe an analog, whatever you want to call it. There was a period where just about every other booth was a different energy drink. Everybody was coming out with an energy drink. If you went to 7-Eleven, you looked in the vault, it was just, 60% of the vault was energy drinks. And then traditional soft drinks kept getting pushed off to the side a little bit. So you had, water for a while, and then, so that trend kind of happens. But the number of energy drinks that end up sticking around out of that equation is literally, you can count on one hand. It just doesn't, there's not enough space for hundreds of brands. There's space for 5 or 6 brands at a kind of scale that you're going to be able to put the money behind them to market them. Or what you're going to do then, in my opinion, that's why I said I would go with the more craft route. So, if I were an operator, what I find appealing as an operator would be, a smaller operation in a geographically limited space with, a really dedicated and committed set of consumers who want my product because it's a better product. And that's what the brand means. It's not, the equivalent, like you said, Budweiser is a fine beer. There's nothing wrong with Budweiser. It's just, if you love beer, it's not going to be your first choice. It's going to be, there's going to be something else you're going to look for. But Budweiser wins through consistency and scale and, all of the distribution muscle that AB has, et cetera. And I just thought that was a place that was going to be more difficult to make any kind of progress in than that ancillary space where we could really focus on delivering a solution. And that's what we've done. I think our mousetrap is the best mousetrap. Now, how well we can communicate that, I think is our challenge, because it gets very technical and very scientific, and that gets a little wonky, and people get tired of that. So, we've done a lot to try to kind of simplify that and make this more about, if you want a craft solution that will grow with you and move with you, there is no more cost-effective way than Green Mill to get that done. We're not the cheapest system out there, but we are way more cost-effective because of our limited to no downtime, because of the efficiency of our system, because of just the automation capability, the repeatability, all those things. So, even the craft brewer wants to know that when they start that process, what they thought they were going to get is what they get. That's how you make good craft beer. Good craft beer is not like, oh, let's see what we get today. It's being able to kind of repeat the same process. Yeah, sorry, I feel like I said a lot, but maybe I'll stop for a minute.
No, that's fine. There was a recent convenience store, like a national convenience store conference in Puerto Rico, and the whole thing was filled with D8, Delta 8.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
It's the trends just kind of keep flowing or whatever. But I think, maybe VapeGate kind of will put that on blast a little bit. People aren't really going out and buying vaporizers, or a lot, at least at convenience stores. I think there's also, when I was up at Lyft in Vancouver, BC in January 2020, they were talking about solventless products in the concentrate segment. Live rosin was up 400% because of the perceived, there's some kind of like perceived healthiness, like it's better or more natural or whatever, with right. the word live rosin, and resin is increasing in product popularity too. even though it's more expensive, there's more value. So I think there's a lot of people flocking to manufacture those products because the margins are a lot higher with a retail price of about $60 a gram for these carts versus, I don't know if you remember how much it is in Florida, wholesale and retail. It's probably maybe $20 a gram at most in retail per gram of flour. So it's a fraction of the cost. Are you seeing similar trends in terms of the products you guys are manufacturing?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And we've recently come out. One of the challenges with what I love about CO2 is the natural. I mean, it's the zero residual effect of CO2. It's a clean, safe solvent. It really gives you, I think, a great product. The challenge with CO2 up until recently was the winterization process required the introduction of ethanol, which kind of defeated the whole proposition, right? I mean, so now you're like, oh, well, we just adulterated the product.
Explain that a little bit, Wes. What is the winterization process for those that don't know?
So, in a normal extraction process, you're going to pull out a crude oil that contains a lot of fats and lipids. Those fats and lipids need to be removed from that crude oil. And the way that you get them out up until recently is through winterization, which is essentially you wash the product in an ethanol bath and then freeze it, lower it to a certain, basically a freezing temperature. And then those lipids and fats separate from the oil that you want to keep. And then you kind of just swipe the fats away and the lipids away. It's dirty, it's expensive, it's time consuming, very slow. And it's just sort of a process that everybody has tolerated. Well, we've been working for some time and people have been talking about what is called inline winterization or real-time winterization. We've trademarked real-time winterization. We've patented the process that now works. And so we've removed the need for the winterization process as a separate process from the extraction process. So with our system now, with a real-time, and it's a combination of a physical add-on to the system. So there's a machine component to this that makes this happen, and a method adjustment that allows it to happen at the same time. So those two things together mean that you lose almost no time in the process, and you end up with a winterized product at the end. And you also add very little space requirement to your process as well. And we see this as being just game changing. And we were just at the MJ Biz Con in Vegas recently in our booth, and everybody wanted to come over and talk about how do we do this? How do we do this? And so we see this as a real just industry game changer because of, like you said, it allows you to sort of create and imagine new products that nobody's been able to make to this point because of that winterization process just being one of them. But we haven't yet really figured out any of the limits of CO2. So that's what I said. We keep saying, our whole mission is push CO2 beyond its known limits. So what else can we do? What else can we do? Live rosin is a great example. I think there are multiple ways to get to that end product. I think if what people are trying to do with, various ice products or, different shatters or different, any kind of thing that, I think you can start to imagine what effect are we trying to get? What characteristics are we trying to hold on to? Now, how do we use our mechanical and chemical engineering understanding to begin to put those solutions on the table more and more consistently and cost effectively? And that's our whole mission here.
Why is there not a mobile processing industry? There's not people running around manufacturing joints for different producers or processors. There doesn't seem to be, a van or a fleet of trucks going out utilizing, green mill supercritical, for example, and going to a producer processor and doing mobile processing. And yet delivery is taking off. Something like 60% or something in California is all delivery. So if delivery is taking off, what's the slowdown or limitations for mobile processing?
I think we're going to see more and more of it. I mean, I think you see people setting up for that. I think it really, the challenge goes back to, in my opinion, the challenge goes back to what I was saying earlier, where most of the thinking has started with the supply side mindset, saying how much biomass do you need to extract, or what mobile processing is required because somebody's got a supply problem that they're trying to fix. I think that what most people are starting to see is that that mobile processing is going to be, let's say, relatively expensive, and then if the demand is not there, then they don't need the mobile processing anymore, right? So it's sort of, I think that whole economic equation is sorting itself out, and until it gets more clear, I think it's difficult for a mobile processor to hit the sweet spot in terms of the capacity, capability, efficiency of that whole mobile processing solution, and the economics of it to the operator. But I think that's coming, Josh. I mean, I mean, there's no question. I think that we're going to see some of that. The other, complicating factor in that equation, I think, is licensing, and the kind of various restrictions and different nuances of the licensing model in the different states in the U.S. in particular, and you can talk about international as well. Why do you think? I mean, I know this is not your interview, but I'm just curious to see why you think it's not taking off, because I'd love your opinion.
I mean, in Canada, I don't think it's taken off because people have proprietary methods and they don't want that to be shared. I think in the US, not being able to go across state lines is difficult. You'd have to clean the machine out, so there's zero THC in there.
Right.
But I think maybe it's just there's just people who haven't maybe haven't thought about it, haven't done it, haven't tried to execute it. I haven't even seen anybody try to execute it. There's been people who've talked about it, mobile processing, but I haven't really seen implementation even attempted. I think because of the cost of trying to make that work and the lack of licensing that you mentioned, the regulations. Not too long ago, people were seeing motels in Florida and across the country blowing up from BHO and other forms of creating concentrate. So I think that there's this regulatory pressure to kind of hold that back. That's my take.
I think that's right too. But I think we will continue to see people working to develop, whether it's mobile solutions or co-ops, or people are going to have to. There's going to have to be some sharing of method. There's going to have to be sharing of resources and technology, so that people do get efficiencies. But I think one of the things I love about the solution that we provide is that we can, the payback on one of our systems for a healthy business is days, not years. So that also becomes, it's kind of like if you go back to Starbucks again, every Starbucks puts at least one, most of them have several, $5,000 espresso machines on the counter. That's done because the economics of that makes sense, and that's the quality of the product that you want. If you said, okay, we'll show up with the espresso machine every day at 10:30 and stay until noon, and anybody who wants espresso can come then, it kind of messes up the whole model, even if you save a few bucks. So I think that's the challenge right now, is trying to figure out how is that really going to work? What does that look like from an execution perspective? I think we can dream it up, but I just think it's harder to do than we figured out yet.
What's the future of concentrates look like? We've seen some innovation. Dab tabs came out a few years ago and just never took off. They were trying to sell these ceramic concentrate tabs to soccer moms to make it really easy to like drop these mint looking, like a dinner mint looking tab into the device or whatever. But it's a ritual, and I don't think people are buying the necessary tools. That's why Washington State pre-rolls it's weird. The number one demographic for pre-rolls is white women 50 and over. I'm assuming, because I haven't interviewed very many white women 50 and over and asked them why they're buying pre-rolls. My assumption is that they don't want the ritual. They don't want to look like a crackhead to buy a pipe. They're definitely not going out and buying a volcano or anything else. They want to buy it, ditch it, and they're done. So that's the opposite of innovation. That's about price and convenience that you mentioned earlier as some of the top two decision makers. But we haven't seen a lot of innovation because of the lack of legality. That's why beverages haven't taken off, because as you know, it takes regional facilities to make beverages a national product. It's one of the lowest margins and one of the most expensive products, and it's really, really expensive to do at scale. Where is the innovations in the industry headed? Where do you see things going as dabs tabs didn't quite work out? What do you think will? What are you seeing?
I mean, I think it's going to be, I think where we're headed is more to the consumer control. The individual gets to control what they want, when they want it, and how they get it. So I think that, I'm amazed at some of the, I do think there's some interesting vape innovations that have been coming out recently. I told you about the one, I think the company's called Akura, which, I was introduced to recently, which I just found really quite nice. It's a, small, like kind of egg-shaped vaporizer with a tiny hole in the top. Very, sort of intuitive controls on the vaporizer. And then and it's a stick, it's a paper, it's a pre-roll essentially. I mean, it's a small pre-roll that you can get already packed with, from various suppliers, or you can put your own, botanical product in there. And then you just take that little stick, push it down into the hole on the vaporizer, and then you're vaping, flower product, which I think gives you a lot of the advantages of the whole of pre-rolls. It also gives you the advantage of not burning the product, which is better, I think, better for you than burning the product. People argue about that. And also the discreetness of what you get from a vape product instead of burning it. So I think those kind of innovations are going to continue to be quite interesting. The problem with them, I think, is multiple. But one of the problems with that particular solution is very expensive. So, it knocks a lot of people out of the market. And I think that's another reason pre-rolls are very attractive, is like you said, because they're cheap. But I think what we're going to see particularly with concentrate products, is more and more where the quality of the oil, the quality of the concentrate itself is what people get really interested in. And then the administration of that becomes sort of almost agnostic in a way, and convenient in a way, so that I know what my oil is and where it comes from, or if it's not oil, whatever that concentrate product is, and I know precisely what's in it. I think that's been very difficult for people to have confidence in, because they just don't know. It's like, oh, we'll take this dropper and fill it up to about here, and then and it kind of feels like, well, I don't know how much I just got. And I think that's really confusing for people, versus a vaped or a smoked product that titrates very easily. And then, because onset is so individual, it's so different for everybody. And I think being able to really dose in a very accurate way is an important part of the concentrate business that we haven't cracked yet.
Yeah, you might be interested in the Voyager, based in Toronto. It's an accurate dosing for beverages. So it's kind of a grab and go, really compact and small. So I definitely see products and devices like that taking off in popularity.
Interesting. Yeah.
There's probably a lot. He was actually at MJ Unpacked. He was not at MJ Biz Con, but the Marijuana Business Conference was in Vegas recently. Weed Week, as it's now called, I guess, because there's many, many events. I attended 4 events over 5 days, and was busy. I got a lot out of it. Why did you go to MJ BizCon? What were you anticipating? And what was the takeaway? What'd you get out of it?
I thought it was, it's good. We've been, we started going to MJ BizCon in 2017, I guess, and, missed it last year because of COVID. There wasn't one. And it was a big miss for us. It's a place where, we get a lot of access to interested, buyers of our systems and operators, that's otherwise kind of hard for us as a small company to go get. So we see that as valuable. I think the thing that I was pleasantly surprised with, let's say this time, was people are in a very different place in their understanding of what's happening and kind of what they're trying to do. I think in the past, we got a lot of people just trying to get educated. You know, they just wanted to know kind of how does this work and what are my options? And, you know, now I think people have a much kind of broader foundational understanding of different pieces of the industry. And they're getting a lot more targeted in terms of what it is they're trying to understand or to sort of accomplish. So I didn't feel like we saw as many people as we have at some shows in the past, but I felt like everybody that we talked to and met at MJ BizCon was, you know, a very interested and informed sort of potential partner in this space in a way that they haven't been in the past. And I think people are also much quicker to discern the what they can trust and what they can't trust. I'll put it that way. And I think that was nice for people to confirm what we're presenting to them, to see them be excited about it, to see them, you know, kind of really appreciate what we've done versus what some of our competitors sort of like to say they do but don't do.
When you're looking at you know, East Coast versus West Coast, or let me put it this way, the merging markets versus the existing marketplace, where are you selling more to? And do you know what type of concentrate that they're making? Is it shatter, or is it CO2? Is it wax? Is it BHO? Do you know what concentrate or what solvent, what type of concentrate they're using and where they're buying from?
Only anecdotally, I would say, Josh. I mean, not like we would like to know to that extent. I think we're selling kind of primarily to, we have more traditional CBD operators who are farming hemp using our system to extract CBD. We have, you know, high-end cannabis operators who are using our stuff to produce, you know, very like Candescent, for example, use a green mill system for all of its stylus vape line, you know, which won some awards. There's a Haven in Michigan just won some awards for their oil using green mill systems. We have several people that use it for non-cannabis applications like hops, lavender, making concentrated oils. You know, typically I think there's the end use, the consumer, whatever that sort of product that you're trying to satisfy the consumer with, I think changes the dynamics of what kind of solution you want to have. So I think supercritical CO2 is a very important solution to have in your arsenal. I think BHO has a place. You know, I think just, you know, straight up high volume hydrocarbon solutions there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it creates a product that might have a place in the marketplace. You know, I'm a guitar player. I like to play guitar. I have more than one guitar. You know, there are applications for the guitar that are better on certain, you know, I want my steel string dreadnought guitar for certain applications. I want my, you know, electric guitar for other applications. And I want a classical guitar when I'm playing certain other kinds of music. And it would be nonsensical to think, oh, I just need one guitar. Nobody would say that, you know, and yet we sort of talk like there's some best extraction idea or some best concentrate idea. I don't feel that way. I feel like it's not just feel. I don't think consumers want that. I think what consumers want is they want different kinds of products. Coca-Cola doesn't make the same. Coca-Cola didn't make carbonated soft drinks like Coke in the same way or in the same place or on the same equipment that they make, you know, Simply orange juice, for example. It's a totally different proposition. And I think that's what we're going to see. They're both beverages, but I think that's what we're going to start to see in this cannabis space. It's just very different propositions, and there will be room for not a lot, but there will be room for multiple sort of providers and suppliers into that space to enable those solutions. And I think we're going to see more application of CO2, not less, as we go forward, even though people are moving away from, in some ways, certain CO2 applications. They're also going, oh, I didn't realize I could do this, and I could do this, and I could do this. And I think that's what we're excited about.
Yeah, I always advise my clients to have some type of solvent list just in case you have a freak moment where regulators freak out and ban it like
Right.
they did in Oregon and anywhere else. You kind of have to hedge your bets. But nonetheless, if people are going to have an extraction machine, there's a reason to kind of look at some of the competitors out there. Green Mill Supercritical is one. But when someone is looking at you guys, what is the differentiator? In other words, when someone's looking at Green Mill Supercritical, why would they buy your machine and not a competitor?
Well, I think there are multiple reasons. I think that, for me, CO2 extraction is all about how well you can control temperature, flow rate, and pressure. The better you can control those variables, the more consistent, precise, and cost-effective your output's going to be. And, at Green Mill, our tolerances there are second to none, and we've got data to prove it. We've published that data. It's on our website. You can see our system. You run an extraction, say you do a 3-hour run at 3,500 PSI. Our system is going to fluctuate probably 5 PSI either side of 3,500. Our competitive system might fluctuate 300 PSI either side of 3,500. Is that the end of the world? No, probably not. But what it means is you're getting a little bit less of a precise product than you thought you were. They make fun of me all the time, Josh, because I use these analogies, but I talk about cheesecake sometimes. And I say, if I want to make a perfect cheesecake, I got to have the right ingredients. I got to have the right methodology. I got to know what I'm doing. I got to have the right tools. I got to have the right recipe. But part of my tools are an oven, let's say, for example. And if the oven doesn't hold the temperature and doesn't distribute the temperature evenly and perfectly across that oven, the cheesecake is going to be less than perfect. It might still be really good. It might be great even, but it's just not, I can't get to perfect without an oven that's going to do the job, right? And so what we like to say is that the Green Mill system is going to do what you expect it to do because the tolerances are so good. And that's because of the way we've engineered it. It's because of the way it's designed and built. It's a proprietary pump. There's a proprietary software solution on the system that helps control the system. So you're going to get what you thought you were going to get. So that's the first big reason. I think also because we are the footprint, for the same throughput, we're about 1/3 the size of our nearest competitor in terms of footprint. So you've got a very flexible system that can go in lots of places in your lab setup that you might not, be able to do with a more permanent, bigger system. And in the end, it's going to be the most cost-effective solution because it doesn't go down. It just doesn't break. And when I was at Certera, we started with one system, and just in the interest of being a good competitor, I'm not going to name them, but I could tell you who they are. We started with one system, and it was down almost as much as it was up, and it was sort of a regular thing. Was our extraction system working today? Nope. And then how do we get it fixed? And cost money, time, everything else that goes along with that. We went to another system, and it was kind of equally down. So, I think that if you're getting what you want out of your extraction system, that is a valuable piece of the equation. It's not a frustration point. Extraction is not going to be the bottleneck with a green mill system. It's just going to enable what you're trying to do. So I think that's the primary differentiator, and I think that you can get it. If you have scale needs that are beyond what our largest system does, then you start to multiply our systems. That gives you redundancy and also gives you some additional flexibility, which I think is a positive.
All right, Wes, we covered a lot. If people want to learn some more, get a hold of you, where are you at? You got a website, on social media?
Yeah, we're all over the place. We're on Instagram, and we've got greenmillsupercritical.com, which is just GREENMILL, just like it sounds, Green Mill, and then supercritical.com. You can find me at Wes, WES, at greenmillsupercritical.com. And we also have, I'm trying to think if it's, we got a LinkedIn page, and Jesse Turner is our head of innovation, who is posting a lot on LinkedIn about kind of what he's up to and what he's discovering, some of the things that are possible with CO2. And I would encourage you to look him up, Jesse Turner on LinkedIn. He's actually in Denver and just doing some really interesting stuff. So we're not hard to find, and we love to talk to people about, kind of what's going on in this space.
Great. And I'll put Wes's LinkedIn contact in the show notes. You can get a hold of him that way. But with that, I think we're gonna have to roll this one up. So I want to thank my guest, Wes Reynolds. He is the president and CEO of Green Mill Supercritical. Wes, thanks for being on the Talking Hedge.
Josh, thanks a bunch for everything you're doing for the industry, man. Take care.
Yeah, I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.